Connie Martinson Talks Books. Well, I have to tell you, when I first married my husband, there was a couple that every year I almost said we had to go to their shrine and say thank you. The couple were Dale Evans and Roy Rogers, who had made my husband a director of their television show. It was long before we had married, but I heard the story year after year. Well, all I can say is it's a great thrill for me to have their daughter, Cheryl, who has written a book called Cowboy Princess, Life with My Parents, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, Cheryl Rogers-Barnett, written with Frank Thompson. The book is published by Taylor Publishing. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you, Connie.
And, you know, my heart breaks a little bit because we were on what I called Dale and Roy's sort of last happy trails when we would come up to Apple Valley every year for charity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they loved having everybody come up, and it gave them a chance to see their friends, and that was great fun.
But this is how you were the daughter of Roy and his first wife.
Yes.
And you were adopted in Texas, and your mother died, and in between there were a few other children, and Roy turns to you and say, well, you're now the woman of the house, you've got to take care of the children.
Yeah.
And little did you know there was an actress he had met and had a romance with, but she was going to become new mom, Dale Evans.
Yeah. Well, she'd been my hero. They started working together in '43. And unlike some of Dad's co-stars, she loved kids. So she would let me go into her dressing room and get into her makeup. I mean, I was 3 years old. And with Mommy, with Arlene, whenever she would be pregnant, her health was just terrible. In fact, that's why they had adopted me, because the doctors told her that she could never carry a child. And 3 years later, Linda Lou was born, and then 3 years after that, Dusty was born. So I was 6.5 when she died, and Dad told me that I was now the lady of the house. And I took it really seriously, and where I thought Dale was wonderful, when they got married, especially since he presented it to us as a surprise, I was insulted and not very cooperative, and I was really a brat.
Okay. And the household help, because you had two working parents, would take it out on you, according to the book, a bit.
A little bit. They weren't usually bad with me or Linda Lou or Dusty. It was as Mom and Dad adopted more children. And
how many were there at full blown?
Okay, the most of us were 9. The most of us that ever lived in the house at once was 7. Tommy, Mom's son, was at SC when Mom and Dad got married. He got married to his childhood sweetheart, Barbara, just a year or so after Mom and Dad got married.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with Robin, it wasn't until after Robin's birth and death at 2 that they really started adopting. And then we became a mini United Nations.
Yeah, you really from all over the world, just about.
Yeah.
What you do mention that in high school, it was never, because having mentioned Tommy was at SC, that there was no sort of pressure put on any of the kids that you must have a college education.
No, I think that Tommy, he was really more encouraged by my grandparents, by Mom's mother and father. And then Mom at the time was married to a musical director, Dale Butts, who worked for Republic and did the music for Dad's movies. Tommy was a musical genius. I mean, he's just so talented, like Mom was. He's a composer, arranger.
She had written Happy Trails.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think Leslie knew it either. I mentioned it as I'm reading your book.
Yeah, well, she did that for Dad's radio show. Then, while the TVs were being done, she wrote the Bible tells me so, which is have faith, hope, and charity, not Jesus loves me.
And I have to show the picture of you down below here as a baby with Roy.
Dad knew that Larry liked my baby pictures, my husband Larry. So whenever Dad would come across any baby pictures, he'd pass them on to my husband. So we've got a bunch of them.
Well, now growing up as Cowboy Princess, being the daughter of movie stars in the valley where you were living, pros and cons of that?
I was lucky. The valley, you know, so many people lived in the San Fernando Valley that worked for all of the different studios. So I went to school with Duncan Ronaldo's daughter, with Bud Abbott's daughter, with so-and-so's nephew or niece, or, you know, or lighting people,
Bobby
directors.
Yeah.
Well, I'd known Bobby forever because he grew up at Republic Studios. He was one of the little beavers. He's a few years older than I am, but I'd known him always. And then Dad, as the Roy Rogers show was ending, Dad started a series called Brave Eagle. And Bob worked on that, and he had just gotten out of the Navy, so I dated him for a bit, and he was great. We had a wonderful time. We were just buddies, you know.
And Dale let all of the kids be in the commercials.
Yeah.
And you got paid.
Yeah.
But you didn't see the money.
No, she took it right and put it in a savings account, but that's what my first car was bought with, too. I mean,
what was it, good old Gertrude or something?
Gertrude the Gutless Wonder, a 1950 green Chevy, yes, the tank.
And then you go to Hawaii to do commercials?
Well, we were in Hawaii. They were doing something, a show over there. And we went to the Children's Hospital and a bunch of different things. It was just fabulous. And it was just the girls that time. It was Linda Lou and I and Dodie, who had just been adopted. So we had a wonderful time. It was just great.
And Cheryl also was a singer as a young teenager. And that got sort of nipped in the bud when you said you started to act like Miss Movie Star, not daughter of movie star.
Yeah, well, and I was engaged at the time, and he was not thrilled with having a wife that was a performer. So, you know,
listened to the wrong person when you didn't do the Ed Sullivan show.
I know that, you know, and Mom, I never did know if she had a hand in sort of encouraging that connection. She said that she didn't.
Yeah.
And
maybe you were just very good.
I don't know. Well, I was very lucky. I worked with the Frontiersmen. They were like the Sons of the Pioneers. They were a wonderful group, and they were very protective of me since they'd known Dad forever, and really supportive. So I was really lucky with that.
And for those who want to know, did you ever ride on Trigger?
Oh, yes. He was the most incredible horse. When Dad was on him, he was a champion who would, you know, jump over anything, do whatever was required of the hero's horse. But you would put a kid on him or somebody with less experience, and you would think he was, you know, one of those old plow horses that just pulled a cart or something.
Now, Trigger was stuffed and was in the museum.
Mounted.
Oh, excuse me. Mounted in Apple Valley Museum.
Yeah.
The museum has closed. Where is Trigger?
Trigger is in Branson, Missouri.
Yeah.
That's where the new museum is. You can still, you know, go to royrogers.com. Since it moved and left the West Coast, I'm no longer associated with it. I'm associated with the new Jim and Beverly Rogers Museum of Film History that's being built up in Lone Pine.
As well as with Golden Boots. For those who don't know, it is a group that celebrates Western films and Western movie stars. Now, young girl, how old were you here?
I was 14 when your husband, Les, directed me in the only TV show that I did called The Outlaws of Paradise Valley. And I don't remember the episode number, but They had an idea that it would be a really funny scene if Pat tried to teach me to make pancakes. So when Pat put batter on the grill, it was supposed to smoke. And they couldn't get it to smoke. The prop man just couldn't come up with the right formula. So they finally put some kerosene or something in, and Pat put the batter on, and it blew up in our faces. I mean, I had no lashes or eyebrows for a while.
Yeah,
It was very exciting.
Very exciting. Now, you do tell, which most people do not know, these shows were made for like a nickel. I mean, they were song and dance.
Yeah.
The people on the crew worked from really 6 in the morning till 11 at night.
Yeah.
And there was something
6 days
called,
a week?
Yeah, 6 days a week. And Panic Peak was as the sun went down.
Yeah. It just, you know, everybody says, oh, glamour, glamour, glamour. Oh, for an outsider looking in, or for a kid being on the set, I thought it was, you know, fantasy land. But for the people that were working in it, it was hard, grinding. With people even now that do TV series, I understand why they hit the wall and burn out in 5 or 6 years. If they're lucky enough to have a series, they still hit this horrible burnout because the schedule is just so grueling.
Now, did Roy finance his own films,
That
his own
he did.
TV?
Yeah, the TV, not the films.
Yeah.
That was Republic Studios. But when he left the studio and the sort of protective, but at the same time dictatorial feeling, you know, that you had from being under contract, when he went on his own and broke with the studios and went into television, that was at a time that the studios looked at TV as a threat instead of an opportunity. So he did. He financed his own. He and his business manager got their sponsors and everything. Yes. Yeah. Art Rush.
It was like a family, wasn't it,
sure
within the Roy and Dale group? Are they in syndication now?
As far as I know, other than maybe offshore somewhere, they're not being seen anywhere. Nobody owns them all.
Nobody does.
It got broken up into 2 or 3 pieces.
Yeah.
So since nobody owns them all, nobody's doing it, which is sad.
Yeah.
They were really good entertainment.
Do you own any of them?
We have some copies of them, but not viewing rights as far as putting them on television. Or at least that's my understanding.
So somebody could come in and colorize them for those that weren't in color to still re-syndicate.
I would imagine so. I mean, that's just not my field of expertise.
Yours is family and getting married, what, at 17 the first time?
Oh, yeah. It just, you know, so many of my friends were doing it, and especially being adopted, I had this big urge to have a blood family of my own. So that was a real push for me.
Yeah.
And
but you did go back to try to find your biological parents and found a grandfather who evidently became close.
Yeah. Oh, he was a delightful man. I could have never done it without Mom's help.
Yeah.
Just like I would have never written the book without Mom and my husband Larry pushing me into it. She was the most incredible, remarkable booster, cheerleader, whatever. I mean, anything that her kids wanted to do, she was there trying to facilitate.
That's nice to know, because I've heard nothing but glowing reports about her, you know, from Leslie and working with her, and even the fact she recorded the one song that was ever published for the Chihuahua song.
I love that title.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was just a great lady.
Yeah. Well, this is really what I would call a testimony to both of them. And the legacy, of course, besides the film, are all you kids that bear the ethics and the work theory that they came out with.
Yeah. They, you know, it was very Midwestern American values.
Yeah, solid Americana.
Sure.
including his friendship with Billy Graham, which
Yes.
is a wonderful story here. Cheryl, thank you very much.
Oh.
Will you autograph my book? And
Oh.
we'll be back after a short pause.
Okay, be delighted.